welcome to the deep dive. Today we're looking at a really harrowing story, but one with incredible survival at its core. It happened on April 22nd, 2025.
That's right. In the Baisaran Valley, Jammu and Kashmir, people call it mini Switzerland. It's that beautiful.
Exactly, stunning place. But what unfolded there was, well, a complete nightmare. We want to go beyond just the headlines today.
Yeah, understand the human side of it, how people react when faced with that kind of sudden terror.
So paint a picture for us. Baisaran Valley.
Okay, so it's about 5 kilometers from Pahalgam. Think dense pine forests, these incredible snow-capped peaks in the distance. It feels really secluded.
You can only get there on foot or by pony. Right. Adds to that feeling.
It does. It feels like a sanctuary almost cut off from the everyday world.
And into this scene comes Prasanna Kumar Bhat. He's a software engineer from Mysuru down in Karnataka.
Right, just a regular guy on vacation with his wife. And his brother was there too, who happens to be a senior Indian Army officer, along with his sister-in-law.
Quite the contrast, isn't it? His normal life, coding, tech, and then suddenly finding himself in the middle of, well, a firefight.
Absolutely. They had this whole 6-day trip planned. Srinagar, Gulmarg, Sonmarg, ending in Pahalgam, looking for beauty, memories.
Not dodging bullets. That wasn't on the itinerary.
Definitely not. It's just unthinkable in that setting.
And there's this detail, isn't there? Their trip was actually delayed.
Yeah, by 2 days. Bad weather. It's strange how things work out, A small delay puts them right there, right then.
A real twist of fate, maybe. So they finally get to Baisaran. When was this?
Around 1:35 in the afternoon. They'd taken the pony ride up.
Picture them. Just arrived. Probably grabbing some tea near the entrance.
Yeah, taking it all in. The peace, the quiet, that feeling of having escaped.
And then it happens. Just under an hour later.
Yeah, bang on 2:25 p.m. Gunfire just erupts out of nowhere.
In this remote, supposedly peaceful valley. Can you even process that sudden shift?
It's hard to imagine, and we're talking serious firepower. 5 or 6 attackers, report said, dressed in military gear.
Which must have added to the confusion initially.
For sure. And armed with American M4 carbines, AK-47s, military-grade weapons.
The outcome was just devastating. 26 people lost their lives.
25 Indians, 1 Nepali citizen, and over 20 injured. Horrific.
The Resistance Front, TRF, they claimed responsibility later. But honestly, in that moment, it wasn't about politics, was it? It was purely about survival.
Absolutely. Pure instinct. And that's where Prasanna's brother, the army officer, well, his training seems to have just kicked in immediately.
Right, in that chaos when everyone else is probably panicking.
He recognized the sound, the pattern. Prasanna mentioned hearing a couple of shots first, then a pause, like a lull.
Deceptive.
Very. But his brother knew better. Then the sustained gunfire started, the screaming. He didn't freeze.
His immediate thought was protection. Getting people safe.
Exactly. His first move, absolutely crucial, was getting Prasanna, the family, and anyone else nearby towards a mobile toilet structure.
Seems unlikely, a mobile toilet as refuge.
But it was cover. Any cover. In that split second, you use what's there. It shows that pragmatic thinking under extreme pressure.
It really does. Because Baisaran Valley, it's beautiful, but it's also fenced, right? To manage the ponies.
Yeah, and those fences suddenly became a huge obstacle. People needed to get out, but the main entrance...
That was near where the attackers were. A death trap.
Precisely.
Yeah.
So heading for the gate wasn't the answer.
This is where the officer's experience comes in again, isn't it? Seeing another way.
Yes. He spots this small opening, like a gap, underneath the fence line. Tight squeeze, probably muddy.
But it was an exit. Away from the gunfire.
He made that split-second call. That's the way out. Get down, get through.
Imagine that. 35, maybe 40 people, including his own family, crawling on their stomachs.
Through mud, under a fence, while gunfire is still going off nearby. It's not Hollywood heroics.
No, it's desperate, resourceful survival. And it worked. It saved dozens of lives.
Once they were through, they weren't totally safe, but they were out of the direct line of fire. They found themselves on this muddy slope.
Hidden, somewhat, by trees.
Partially. Trees. A small stream nearby offered some concealment. The officer guided them into this narrow depression under the trees.
And they just had to wait there, huddle down.
For nearly an hour. Just listening to the attack continue. And the really chilling part Prasanna mentioned.
No phone signal.
None. In this day and age, right? You're in a crisis, injured people maybe, and you can't call for help. Total isolation.
It highlights a real vulnerability.
Yeah.
You assume connectivity everywhere, especially popular tourist spots.
But not always. And that lack of signal had real consequences. It delayed everything.
Because even though the brother eventually got a message out somehow, maybe found a spot with one bar or someone else managed.
Right, but the nearest CRPF base, that's the Central Reserve Police Force, was what, 4 or 5 kilometers away?
And the terrain between them and the valley,
Mm-hmm.
not easy.
Not at all. So help didn't actually arrive on the scene until a full hour after the shooting started. That's a long time to be trapped and terrified.
You just have to think about that hour, waiting, listening, not knowing.
Finally, around 3:40 p.m., they heard helicopters. That must have been an incredible sound.
The first real sign that help was actually coming.
By 4:00 p.m., Indian Army Special Forces were there. They secured the area. Only then could the survivors come out.
And the scene they walked back into must have been just horrific. Seeing the aftermath, the injured being evacuated, the sheer scale of the loss.
Prasanna's own words about it later. You feel the trauma. Relief, yes, huge relief, but also the shock, the horror of what they'd witnessed. It stays with you.
Of course. And the reaction afterwards was understandably huge. Condemnation, protests.
Yeah, there was one outside the Pakistan High Commission in London, I remember reading.
And the Indian government took it very seriously. The investigation was handed over to the NIA, the National Investigation Agency.
Which handles major terror cases. And they also suspended the Indus Waters Treaty with Pakistan. That's a big diplomatic move, shows the gravity.
Beyond the immediate human tragedy, though, think about the ripple effects. Kashmir's tourism.
Oh, it took a massive hit. It had been doing well, recovering, things were looking up. Then something like this happens.
And fear takes over. People
Right.
cancel trips. Uncertainty spreads.
Exactly. And it directly hurts the local people, the pony operators, the shopkeepers, guides,
Yeah.
people like Abdul Wahid Wani, who is quoted talking about how devastating it was for their livelihoods.
It's a brutal reminder that these acts of terror don't just impact the direct victims. Whole communities suffer the economic fallout.
Mm-hmm. And Prasanna, when he got home, he called it a monstrous act, said it stained the beauty of the place with hellfire. Powerful words.
And his gratitude towards his brother and the army, it's immense. He flat out said, "We are alive because of him."
You really see that, don't you? What heroism looks like in that kind of situation. It wasn't Rambo stuff.
No, it was quick. And then spotting that tiny escape route, the gap under the fence, that saved over 35 lives. Pivotal moments.
And we have to remember the huge challenges they faced after escaping the initial gunfire, the tough terrain, no security right there.
And that critical lack of communication, no mobile signal. It really hampered the rescue effort.
Yeah, compounded the danger significantly. These logistical factors are so important in remote incidents.
Then there are the wider impacts. We touched on the protests, the official responses, and that heavy blow to tourism hitting the local economy hard.
But through it all, it's the human story that resonates most strongly. Prasanna's gratitude, the sheer courage shown by his brother, and likely others we don't even know about.
It really drives home that ordinary people can find extraordinary strength in the absolute worst moments.
They really can.
Baisaran Valley. This incredibly beautiful place became a scene of such darkness, but also ultimately of incredible resilience.
A stark contrast.
It really makes you think, doesn't it, about where heroism comes from, often unexpectedly, and maybe about the importance of staying aware, prepared, without living in fear.
And just the strength people can find within themselves and in each other when everything falls apart.
What does it really reveal about our capacity to act decisively, rationally even, when faced with the absolute unthinkable? That's definitely something worth pondering.